Adaora was the epitome of beauty in the village. Her striking features, flawless skin, and captivating smile left many men speechless. She was the center of attention wherever she went, and her confidence was undeniable. Something about Adaora also was that she was attracted to wealth and status. She had watched her friends settle for less than desirable husbands, and she was determined to marry someone who could provide for her in style. As a result, Adaora had become notorious in the village for turning down suitors. She would scrutinize their finances, their family background, and their education before deciding whether they were worthy of her attention. Many men had tried to win her hand, but none had succeeded. That was until Ekene set his sights on her. Ekene was known for his lavish spending on women, buying expensive items, the latest gadgets. He owned the fanciest cars and the most expensive wristwatches and the largest mansion in the village. At first, Adaora was not impressed by Ekene's advances. She received him in her family's living room, her eyes scanning him from head to toe. But as she noticed the gleaming gold wristwatch on his wrist, the sleek black sports car parked outside, and the designer clothes he wore, her attitude began to change. Ekene, sensing Adaora's interest, pulled out all the stops to impress her. He showered her with expensive gifts, took her on romantic dates to the fanciest restaurants in town, and showed her off to his friends and acquaintances. Adaora was swept off her feet by Ekene's wealth and charm. She found herself falling deeply in love with him, and soon she was putting pressure on him to propose. Ekene, delighted by Adaora's change of heart, proposed to her in a grand ceremony, complete with fireworks, live music, and a diamond ring that sparkled like the stars. Adaora, overjoyed by the proposal, accepted Ekene's ring and promised to be his wife. The wedding was a lavish affair. Adaora was over the moon with happiness, convinced that she had landed her heart's desire. But as the weeks went by, Adaora began to notice strange things about her husband. She couldn't shake off the feeling that something was terribly wrong. She had been experiencing an inexplicable hunger, a gnawing sensation that no amount of food could satisfy. She would eat and eat, but the hunger would still linger, leaving her feeling weak and lethargic. Her body was beginning to reflect this. Her once curvy figure now gaunt and lean. Her skin was pale, her eyes sunken, and her hair lacked its usual luster. During her monthly flow, Ekene would transform into the perfect husband. He would pamper her, cook her favorite meals, and even offer to dispose of her used pads. At first, Adaora had been touched by his thoughtful gestures, but as time went by, she began to feel a growing sense of unease. Why was Ekene so insistent on disposing of her pads? What did he do with them? She had tried to brush off her concerns, telling herself that she was just being paranoid, but the feelings persisted. One day, Adaora decided to follow Ekene and see what he did with her used pad. She trailed behind him, her heart pounding in her chest. As he made his way to the bathroom, she hid behind the door, watching in horror as Ekene squeezed the contents of the pad into a bottle, mixed it with a concoction, and drank it. Adaora felt a wave of nausea wash over her, her mind reeling with the implications of what she had just seen. She tried to step back, but her legs felt like lead, and she collapsed to the ground, fainting. When she came to, she was held bound by ropes and tied to the bedstand by Ekene. She screamed at him to be let go, but Ekene ignored her. He just stared at her with a creepy smile on his face. "Why are you doing this?" Adaora asked, trying to struggle free. "You are mine," Ekene replied, his voice low. "I will do whatever it takes to keep you." Ekene's eyes blazed with a malevolent intensity as he began to reveal the twisted motivations behind his actions. "You are the reason I am doing this, Adaora," he spat, his voice dripping with venom. "You are the one who rejected me, who called me wretched and unworthy. You think you are so much better than me." As she lay there, helpless and terrified, Ekene began to chant and perform some sort of dark ritual. Adaora knew that she had to get out before it was too late, but how? Suddenly, Ekene stopped chanting and looked at Adaora with an evil grin. "You know, my dear, I have been using your blood to sustain my own life, and now it's time for the final ritual." Adora's eyes widened in horror as Ekene pulled out a dagger and began to chant again. She knew that she had to act fast if she wanted to survive. With all her might, Adaora struggled against the ropes, trying to break free, but they were too tight and she couldn't move. Just as Ekene was about to stab her with the dagger, Adaora heard a loud noise coming from outside the room. It sounded like someone was breaking down the door. Ekene's eyes darted towards the door, and for a split second, he was distracted. That was all the time she needed. With a surge of adrenaline, Adaora managed to break free from the ropes and grabbed the dagger from Ekene's hand. She stabbed him on the wrist and he fell to the ground. As the door burst open, Adaora saw a group of police officers rushing into the room. Apparently, Ekene had been on the search list of the officers in the city before relocating to the village. The police officers quickly subdued him and handcuffed him. "You are under arrest for attempted murder and suspicion of ritual activities," one of the officers read from a piece of paper. As they led Ekene away, Adaora felt a wave of relief wash over her. She was safe, she was alive, and she had finally escaped the clutches of the monster who had been holding her captive. The police officers turned to her and asked if she was okay. Adaora nodded, still in shock. "We have been tracking him for months," one of the officers explained. "He has been linked to a string of ritual murders in the city. We are glad we were able to catch him before he could harm you." Adaora watched, still in shock, as they dragged Ekene away, his eyes blazing with anger and hatred. The police officers turned their attention to Adaora, gently helping her up to her feet and leading her out of the room. They took her to the hospital where she was treated for her injuries and given counseling to deal with the trauma she had endured. Adaora couldn't help but think about the past few months. She had been so blinded by Ekene's wealth and charm, and she had almost paid the ultimate price for it. But now, she saw things clearly. Money wasn't everything, and she was grateful to be alive.